I did not play all the games that came out in 2024. I couldn't have done that with any real insight as to the game's full experience, so I didn't even look into most of the new releases. Now, mind you, I will play any game, but if it doesn't meet the following three criteria, it's not a tabletop adventure for me. Not a contender for Storytile Game of the Year, most definitely. So, what were the games I played and which ones met the three aspects in order to be nominated? The first aspect that makes a game a Storytile's experience is, can the game comfortably be played solo? It doesn't have to have a solo mode per se, let alone be a solo-only game, but it needs to accommodate a single player without it becoming more work than fun. Most games actually facilitate solo play, but for instance, area control and two-player only games become challenging. So, Fractured Sky, Lord of the Rings Duel for Middle-earth, and Ironwood, thematic experiences as they may be, didn't make the list. The second aspect is whether or not the game is not just thematic, but expresses this properly through its components. A good adventure becomes that much more immersive if it has great table presence, luscious art, thematically tied components, and an overall gorgeous production that exudes the invitation to engage with it. Gloomhaven Buttons and Bugs, Arcs, Kinfire Dell, Leviathan Wilds, Dead Cells, and Slay the Spire unfortunately scored much lower in this category because the aim was gameplay over aesthetics. The last aspect, important to an adventure's experience worthy of being in Storytiles, is how story-focused it is. Characters, locations, and events drive a good story forward. Every game naturally evokes emergent stories from players, but how well do the gameplay mechanics serve the story the game is trying to tell? Despite being beautiful games, Explorers of Navoria, Harrow County, SETI, Divinus, and Creature Caravan were mainly focused on the gameplay cycle and the stories players associated with it each time they play, and did little to no actual world building that included the players. So which games did make the cut? Which experiences were truly adventurous and engaging? 5 games that were original and 5 that were based on previous outings stood out. But before we get to those outstanding 10 adventures, there are 2 honorary mentions that almost made the cut.
Theria is a brutal and savage world. Humanity faces the wrath of raging beasts. A sudden fury awoke within them. Only the hunters have the strength to face them. The hunt begins.
Primal the Awakening was released around the time boss battlers were gaining in popularity fast. Monster Hunter had just launched, while Ain Trespass Odyssey, Townsfolk Tussle, Oathsworn, and Vagrant Song followed where Kingdom Death Monster broke ground years before. I'll be honest, it's not my favorite type of experience, as it focuses mostly on singular battles. Granted, there often is some campaign and crafting or settlement growth attached to it, but world building can be bare bones. So imagine my surprise when a minimalist approach to tactical positioning and doubling down on huge monsters through minis and gear cards with crazily oversized weapons actually had some decent story and world building behind it. There was gorgeous artwork, a map/quest board to move around on and take on quests, and a genuine tome of creatures, which is both the art book and the bestiary of the game. For each region of Theria, the book features a detailed description that includes information about the monsters and their environment. Surprises enough, and proof that boss battlers are not written off for me, but still very much a strategic, tactical, battle-centric experience with a thin topping of story.
Discover a world of magic and mystery.
Thorgal is a fantasy adventure series created by Belgian writer Jean Van Ham and Polish artist Grzegorz Rydzyński. Debuting in 1977, it has incorporated elements of Norse mythology, science fiction, and a smidge of horror. It's still ongoing, and I've followed and collected this graphic novel series since I was an 80s teen growing up. So of course when Portal Games announced the board game was in the works, I was immediately interested. Leading a rebellion of runaway slaves against a high priest and destroying his cult temple? Yes, please. A stormy sea, a giant sea serpent, and unusual portals, with your last hope being the guardian of the keys? Naturally. set out to rescue a magical creature kidnapped by giants? Of course. And if this all sounds like you're going to get tons of delicious story journeys throughout the Norse realms, encountering both magical and sci-fi NPCs in interesting locations, you may want to readjust some of those expectations. This co-op hand management and resource puzzle experience is very much focused on the gameplay, as pretty much all Portal games are. There's still a fair amount of lore, narrative, and scenarios built into it, but with the wealth of world building and art already available, it almost feels like a shame that they didn't do just more with that. Even if they had just used the distinctly recognizable art more in the places where it counts. For instance, this Neanderthal does not resemble our titular hero. So, not quite a storyteller's experience with its overly puzzled nature and prudent use of story and artwork, but still worth a mention, if just for nostalgia's sake. Now, let's get to the 10 best, starting with 5 expanding universes. The world has clearly changed since the days of your forefathers. The collapsing lands are choked in gloom and dust belched up from horrific plant creatures. On a cold morning, bathed in pale light, you awaken for another long day of hard labor in the sacred grove, unaware that this will be your last day at the Citadel, and that the course of history is about to change. The Seventh Citadel is an adventure game from the creators of The Seventh Continent, but where with the predecessor you tried to survive on an unknown continent while ridding yourself of a curse, now you play as a quote-unquote slave gardener who escapes the Citadel and needs to explore the collapsing lands in a series of scenarios that unfold a campaign and result in an epic finale against a major threat. This adventure combines the discovery and sandbox exploration of the Seventh Continent and the best of classic RPGs with specific stories and a campaign that knits them together. It also gets rid of some of the aimlessness of the original game and the need to survive and craft, which kept it from being a full-on hit with many. The art remains the same, which is not great, but no one can deny the solid location building, the progressive story events that unfold, and the sheer fun of solving the mystery.
The world is not as it was. The ancient magics stir within the earth, and their return heralds a new age of opportunity for those bold enough to seize upon such glorious times. Within the tombs and crypts of antiquity lie the makings of legends, untold prosperity, unspeakable peril, and the ever-present prospect of glory. The tales of your adventures will echo through the ages, and should your band of reprobates happen to save the world in the course of things, then all the better.
Maladam Dungeons of Enveron is the fantasy reinvention of battle systems, sci-fi, fight and loot skirmisher core space. But both games are so much more than that, I discovered. The emergent story properties of core space were overwhelmingly impressive, and that tradition continues with Maladam. The artwork helps with making the characters come alive. The 3D terrain effortlessly raises the quality of the table presence to epic levels, full pun intended, and the endless parade of official and fan-made scenarios, as well as connecting tissue of what happens between sessions, creates a living world you would not expect from a miniatures board game that looks and plays like this. Many games that follow on this list come with RPGs that can be used to delve deeper into the world building of the board game of the same name, but the magic of Maladam is that the imaginative potential to organically grow these stories around your merry band of adventurers is supported by many gameplay additions before, during, and after each expedition, and it does so fully without the use of an app. Warcrow Adventures, for example, which also came out this year, felt bogged down by its reliance of an app, while the table presence looked as if that's where they saved the money on. With Maladam, you get all the fun right there on the table, and its intuitive rules are a delight. And as a bonus, you can repurpose the walls, doors, furniture, and other dungeon items in any other dungeon crawler, RPG, and adventure game with close-up locales that you may own in your collection.
On the broken trails of Avalon, where Weirdness warps reality. You were one of the few who could forge their own path. I've seen you face many creatures, denizens of shrubs and moss, lurkers of the mists, dwellers of wooden huts, and even those without name in any human language. Your deeds were written among the songs and sagas of Avalon, though people forever argue whether your choices were right.
Kings of Ruin is a follow-up to 2019's Tainted Grail. It takes place in the same lands of Avalon at a different point in time, with new personas taking on a quest to uncover the mysteries surrounding the Kings of Ruin. If you've loved Tainted Grail, you're going to adore Kings of Ruin, as it gives you more journeys to take into the warped Avalon of Awakened Realms, but also tweaks the gameplay framework to make it a smoother experience. I'm a huge fan of Awakened Realms, as they always put stories on the forefront while tinkering with innovative mechanisms on the back end. They don't always stick the landing though. For instance, the adaptation of the video game Stalker did nothing for me thematically. To me, they are much more comfortable at home with their own IPs. I cannot wait to see what they will do with Lands of Evershade, for instance, but for now, I'm a solid fan of Tainted Grail, and I'm going to dig even deeper upon the delivery of the role-playing game from Agat Studios and the release of their video game of the same name. It is such a deliciously fresh and twisted take on the Arthurian legend, I can't get enough of it.
The immense green flame forest was once populated by the Wood Elves, stewards of nature and protectors of the realm of Fae. They mysteriously departed this world nearly a century ago, emptying their cities built among the trees. In their absence, a figure known as the Magi emerged from a mysterious portal, carrying an artifact called the Fate Spool. Its power is capable of bending souls to her will. Now, the entire forest kneels to this enigmatic sorceress.
Fall of the Ancients of Hexcilement, the Forests of Adramon, Fall of the Ancients, as the full title demonstrates how this game system keeps evolving. Hexcilement is a great sandbox adventure game of overland journeying and discovery and leveling up until you can defeat the big boss. There are 5 different flavors of the game, set in different lands with different bosses, and every volume tweaks the rules a bit, so the experience differs. But then, the brilliant Jonathan, who is the designer, took on a writer by the name of James Spade, and the magic began in all earnest: campaign books. The first 2 volumes of Hexcilement now have campaign books attached to them, and it raises the bar not only of the game itself, but introduces a massive amount of plotted story to choose your own adventure from. It also shows the board game industry as a whole just how to do adventure better. Add to this the continued evolution, the artwork on the cards, added swag to bling your game out, and then the Legends books, which are smaller, bite-sized adventures that appear on a regular base, and you've got yourself narrative adventures for life. The only drawback is that Hexcilement can be a little much for folks. True to an open game experience that mimics RPGs better than the majority of board games out there, Jonathan and Co. give us a plethora of rules, both mandatory core ones needed to play the game, but also many more optional ones in case you need them. That's very kind of them, but gamers who play by the letter of the rules may feel overwhelmed if they insist on playing by every little rule. Still, Hexcilement continues to grow and build more worlds, and I'm in it for the ride.
The world is teeming with diverse cultures, breathtaking landscapes, and perilous threats. The ungod's insidious presence seeps into the fabric of the material plane, corrupting morality and twisting reality. The realm teeters on the brink of war as factions compete for dominance. In the wake of the heroic age, legendary individuals stopped the Kemet invasion, marking the dawn of a new era defined by the actions of those with great destinies. Yet, sinister forces, such as the Cult of Shadowwing and the Ungod's spawns, keep weaving their webs of manipulation throughout Tanaris.
Arena the Contest, Tanaris Adventures, Ultimate Tanaris, Tanaris RPG, and Tanaris Expedition Central Sea. It's a lot to take in. and it confuses many a person I recommend this game to. Dragori released an Ultimate Box in 2024 alongside an update kit that streamlined the quest progression, improved the onboarding tutorial, buffed hero combat and skins, and added some mystery envelopes to boot. But the biggest improvement was the rewriting of the entire narrative campaign and adding foreteller audio, which was a massive undertaking, considering how much story there is in Tanaris Adventures. And Tanaris continues to grow. With the pirate-themed Tanaris Expedition Central Sea that launched this year, Dragori continues to make the game more and more accessible, swapping the big arena board out with a map book, giving us a lighter campaign, and, well, perhaps that's a story for 2025. Rest assured, this #1 game of 2023 is alive and well and becoming easier to dig into and lose oneself in for a long time. Solo, with a group, for shorter or longer times, or even a single session, it's all possible with Ultimate Tanaris and Tanaris RPG. Those were the 5 games that had expansions or expanded material come out this year. Now, the 5 original games of 2024.
We came in peace. Even though you feared the noble Zulu people at first, we brought you the most precious of technologies. No more sickness, no more death. We brought to you the nanolith. But your greed knows no limits, only death. When the mothership crashed into Earth, the planet's atmosphere collapsed. The last city in which the remnants of humanity dwell is a nightmare. Dr. Bubble harvests the survivors' nanomachines to fuel his sinister plans. Now the time has come to fight. Wake up. The nanolith awaits.
2024 was a great year for adventure games, particularly dungeon crawlers and campaign games. I'm not typically a big fan of sci-fi genre in games, but for sci-fi adjacent genres like steampunk, gritty sci-fi, or cyberpunk, I will make a happy exception. Something like Earth Under Siege doesn't quite catch my fancy, but a cyberpunk dungeon crawler? Heck yeah, I'll try that. And Nanolith is not just a cyberpunk dungeon crawler. It's an adventure in storytelling, what with its comic book intros, branching splash pages, narrative storybook, and map book tactical scenarios. The only drawback? It's a bit puzzly until you get the hang of it, where the strengths and weaknesses are of each of the characters on your team, and you do have to play four-handed if playing solo, so that can be a bit of a brain burner. Now, Nanolith does such a good job establishing atmosphere through its components. Acrylic standees are on point with the theme, not to mention necessary for the small scenario map footprint. The die-cut player boards, plastic cubes, sleeves, and vinyl stickers all add to the energetic and modern feel for being a cyberpunk team of hackers and warriors fighting an evil corp. The scenarios are varied and told from a personal perspective, reminiscent of Madara, while the gameplay is fast and flows really nicely between tactical puzzles and comic book cutscenes. This is a surefire cyberpunk experience I enjoy, for sure.
The other world is closing in around you, trying to consume you and devour all that makes you who you are. If you want even the slightest chance of surviving, then you must reclaim the shattered fragments of your mind. This will not be easy though, because your past and your secrets are hopelessly entwined with sinister paranoia and feverish nightmares. Consequently, the deeper you wander into this world, the more of your life you uncover, the deeper the terror will grow. Still, you know you must, because there is no other way to escape the other world.
Cthulhu Death May Die may have released their Fear of the Unknown expansion in 2024, but the true novel horror came from Dimension Games' long-delayed pure horror narrative experience called Dawn of Madness. I was very skeptical when they launched the crowdfunding project a few years back, confused as I was by the complexity of gameplay and the lack of clarity regarding where the incentives in the game were. What were you supposed to be doing? How do you resolve these tests? How do you even move? It was one big jumble of a mess. Luckily, the The designers acknowledged this as well and went to work revamping and streamlining the core gameplay, and the result is much more balanced and in tune with a strong story focus. And the tales of horror are strong. Outstanding personal traumas by the main characters are explored as you drift from one haunting location to another, all the while stalked by a nightmarish monstrosity David Cronenberg and Clive Barker would salivate over. This is The Ring, Hereditary, The Conjuring, and The Nun all mixed together with a seasoning of A24 studio movies sprinkled all over it. This is not an experience for the faint of heart, nor is it a game that you want to leave on your table knowing that your kids wander in unnoticed. And therein might lie the problem. Despite being the strongest pure story experience on this list, the game does lack in overall gameplay because it is long. It will take you many hours just to play, and in fact necessitate breaking up one game over several days. Another issue, however minor, are the miniatures. Unless you spend a lot of time with them or paint them very distinctively, the artwork and minis themselves are not distinctive enough. They're all just plain gory. Still, this is the one straight up horror game I'll keep in my collection, not counting Lovecraftian horror, space horror, and fantasy horror, and all the other horrors. This is pure horror. After a bloody civil war, the emperor was banished, and the empire fell into the darkness, governed by the tyranny of the dark shogun. But there was light, a band of unlikely individuals coming together under different circumstances. Akira, a ronin, a disgraced former samurai of the Firefly clan, who recently became blind. Hattori, a ninja of the Mountain Clan desperately searching for his missing wife. Hikaru, a monk and a member of the Dragon Clan, seeking revenge upon the shogun for his crimes against the people. Tomoe, a young skilled samurai from the Sakura clan, looking for her father, who was imprisoned after the war. Will they succeed in turning back the tide of creatures born from the corruption of the shogun's victims? From modern body horror to a more traditional, yet perhaps not fully accurate, folklore-inspired horror, comes a combination of an overland adventure and close-up tactical combat game called Harakiri, Blades of Honor. Like the previous game, and actually the next one on this list, I was not sure at first whether to back this crowdfunded game. I already had a fantasy feudal Japanese experience by the name of Akko Chronicles, and to get another one, I wasn't so sure. But upon release, I saw the sheer bounty of stuff that came with this game. Well-sculpted miniatures, lavishly illustrated scenarios, a storybook, a giant map board, and many tactical tiles for encounters, all set in one of my favorite genres. Yes, this was a narrative campaign experience to sink one's teeth into. For a more complete, relaxed exploration experience, though, I recommend not weighing too heavily on the timer to get everything done. Unless you don't mind breaking the immersion to replay a scenario, that is. And as if there wasn't enough to explore with the core experience and expansions, both the overall story and the personal ones of the characters, Synergetic Games already has run another project for further expansion. So there will be adventures enough in the land of Harakiri.
In this city that he has made into the pride of Khan, the Ilkral has eyes and ears at every corner. He is a beloved ruler, but there is an ambition in him that will not rest until all of Khan has bent the knee. I fear he will burn our homeland to ash and scatter it on the winds if it stands in his way.
There is a growing trend these last 2 years of board games being followed up by RPGs set in the same world. Trudvang, Serifia, Solomon Kane, Conan, Arkham Horror, Ryan Lockett's Arzian, the list continues. One of the most recent and promising board game RPG combos, Tidal Blades 2 Rise of the Unfolders, did not manage to deliver in time before 2024 closed, so unfortunately it's not included on this list. But there is a very rich and colorfully crafted world that did release in 2024 and managed to enchant me. Fateforge Chronicles of Khan drinks deeply from the lore of its RPG roots and gives us a beautifully living realm to journey through. Following another trend, that of modestly short campaigns, Fateforge presents us with a delicious bite of adventure set in the lands of Khan. A short and sweet app-assisted branching narrative with an almost perfectly distilled dungeon crawler where, for once, it doesn't bother me that the enemies are flat discs and the location tiles don't really matter. It's because each time I read a snippet from a faraway land or an unknown name drops and I get the opportunity to dig through my role-playing books and read more background info about said location or character. But even without Agat Studios' gorgeously illustrated and designed RPG, Fateforge stands on its own as a perfectly balanced theme mechanical experience set in an imaginative setting, produced with a high quality that seems to have our hobbies sit up and take notice. After all, my list is not the only one this gem appeared on this year. And if you missed out, good news. Reprints and expansions are in the works and coming soon to crowdfunding. The great powers of our world are struggling for dominance, battling for control of Agamonia. A conflict that has spread like wildfire. The sting of its poison lay heavy in the hearts of many, for the land has known no pain like this ever before. The most unlikely of us have risen, unsung heroes that could sway the balance in our favor. They are the final hope for Agamonia, and their stories are just beginning. By the time many a content creator posted their top 10 of 2024, this early released game was already forgotten in favor of the latest Essenspiel release. Not this guy. Agamonia already blew me away when the crowdfunding project ran. So much story and world building, every update immersive, with a strange character called Riabo sending us to do tasks and retelling stories from the world of Agamonia, and introducing us to a bizarre array of creatures and odd heroes. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. Check out Agamonia's website. There is a heap of lore to explore. Yes, there is a naming convention to be adopted. Terms and names get thrown at you that are truly alien. But this is the fantastically fresh world creator Max Wickstrom present to us, and wordsmith Mike Poyola fleshes out. Talking about narration, did you know it comes with an unobtrusive web-based app that can track your progress, narrate story, and plays atmospheric music in the background? Another map book adventure game, The Mandalorian Adventures, started out with the same kind of pre-release hype, but the story was a rehash of the show, and so everything kind of just felt like a repeat of a better audio-visual experience elsewhere. Agamonia is fully original. The scenarios are plentiful and varied, challenging at times, wondrous at others. No goal to quote-unquote defeat all enemies in sight here. And Agamonia is colorful, from the world and its inhabitants down to the flora and the politics between factions which you track your allegiance with, to its very production itself. The nostalgic black and white illustrations of Petri Hiltunen go hand in hand with the color artwork of Tomas Jadrusek and the utterly stunning maps of Damian Mamoliti. Dual-layered boards hold poker chips indicating your energy and health, skills which grow with you as you level up. And even the metal coins are original and infused with lore. And then there's the gameplay, perfectly themed mechanical symbiosis. Jerry Kasanan's graphic design is pure accessible design, making iconography clear and easy to grasp quickly. Although there are some minor annoyances at first, nothing you can't house rule though. There is a lot to explore in each scenario if you allow for the timer to be a little bit more merciful and the initiative cards a little more forgiving. Enjoy the experience. And if your team fails, no worries. Let them recuperate. Grab a couple of fresh heroes, level them up, and pick up where you left off. There is a fail forward of sorts, but it does make you weaker over time, so there too, be kind and give your band of adventurers a little extra gear or a pro bono henchman. Still, chances are this may end up being the one campaign you will replay in years to come. There are so many choices to be made, things to do over others, alliances to make in different directions. It's a wealth of discoveries. I cannot give Max and the entire team at Lotopelli enough credit for this masterpiece of the game. No, not a game, but a true tabletop adventure. Any game on this list deserves that title as it elevates the experience from the designer's vision to the unique player's personal journey into the unknown. Yet Agamonia pushes that journey of discovery into realms until now unexplored. And if the map is anything to be believed, we have only seen 1/8 of Agamonia. Let's hope we get to see much more in years to come. And that wraps it up. These are my 10 games of 2024 that I consider tabletop adventures. Do yourself a favor, check them out. They are readily available, or they will come back to crowdfunding at one point or another in one form or another. And don't forget, keep exploring.